the WWDC State of the Union Address for developers, and a passwordless future? This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by MacVoices After Dark. Uncensored, off-topic, and always off the wall. MacVoices After Dark is available as a benefit to our Patreon subscribers. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's Tuesday night. We are back on our regular schedule. It is 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, whatever time that is, wherever you happen to be. You should be in the YouTube chat room at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV, so you can be part of the show and throw your comments and opinions around. But if not, we do it every Tuesday, so just mark your calendar for next Tuesday and every Tuesday thereafter, because we will always be here on Tuesday nights. Last week we cheated. We went to Monday because both David and I were doing some traveling, but more importantly, it was also WWDC keynote day, and we didn't want to hold our opinions until Tuesday. So we did that. The show is out, and you can go and look at that. And that's kind of where I want to start tonight, with a little bit of follow-up. But before we do that, we'll go around the room, see who all's here, and then we'll get to it. So first up, someone we haven't seen for a while that I'm delighted to have back, Mr. Mike Schmitz. Mike, it's great to have you back.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here, Chuck.
Got you off the soccer field, eh?
You did, yep.
That's good. David Ginsburg is here. He got up out of his sickbed just to do MacVoices Live.
I did. Good to be here. Yeah, unfortunately, I did contract COVID, but I am now negative, so I'm very happy. And good to be back and back in the saddle, and got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
See, he says he contracted COVID. I just think he was drinking the cheap stuff myself, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Brittany Smith is here as well. Brittany, good to have you back. We've missed you.
Thanks, Chuck. I'm excited to be back.
It's great to have you. Warren Sklar is once again in his cave, in his basement. His wife is away, so he can join us. Warren, good to have you.
Don't know what she's thinking to leave me alone all this time. Bad things are going to happen. I'm good. Good to be back. It's also one of the highlights of my week to be here, and glad we could talk about a week's worth of horrible betas for me.
That's not what Apple wants to hear, unfortunately.
Feedback.
They do.
Yes,
actually
feedback.
They do, but yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, lots of feedback. Jeff Gamet is here, but I know, Jeff, you're going to have to cut out just a little early on us because you're doing a user group thing tonight.
I am. I will be speaking at the Mac and Tech user group, and they're a fun group, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, they are a fun group. So tell them we all send our best.
I will do that.
Good. Thank you. Last but absolutely not least, Mr. Jim Ray from a different locale tonight. Jim, welcome.
Welcome. Dave, I'm sorry to hear about you getting COVID.
Happens.
3 out of the 4 people that I know that went to the keynote last week got COVID.
Ooh,
Wow.
Nope.
but good. So I guess it's still out there. It
is.
Happily, it seems though, and David, I certainly don't want to minimize any symptoms you've had, but it seems like it's not quite the scary thing that it has been up to this point. So
Just a bad cold.
yeah.
Hooray for vaccinations.
Yeah, really.
I do know somebody in their 30s in New Zealand that had it like 3 months ago and still is in pretty, I mean, not at death's door, but definitely not recovered. And, very affected.
I had just real quick, I had long COVID when I had the COVID the first time, and then it only went for about 6 months, and then it went away after I got COVID again with the Omicron. So I think, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because basically you're getting more when you get the virus again. Essentially, that's what the vaccine is doing. It's introducing the virus into you. So, yeah, it knocked it out of me. So,
oh, that's good. Long Whatever it takes. Whatever it
I'll
takes.
contact my friend and tell him to get it again.
I mean,
Dr. Jim says.
That's not what I say.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on Zoom calls either. So
That's right.
And joining us fashionably late, but it's great to have her anyway, Ms. Kelly Guimont. Kelly, welcome. You snuck in during the introductions.
I most of the time try to be a little subtle if I'm not on time to sort of tiptoe in the back at the end. So
Well, it's great to have you too.
hey, at least this is the only event I'm supposed to be at right now. So, I've got that going for me.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I'm not going to go any farther than that, Kelly. I promise.
Uh-huh.
Not now, anyway. Maybe later.
Okay. That's fair.
So, folks, I said we wanted to just continue our dub discussion a little bit because it is now a week later, a little more than a week later, actually. And as Warren alluded to, he's been running the betas. A number of, at least I think several of our panel members have been running betas. And I want to hear about how that's been going. But first, I wanted to ask Jim Ray to sort of take us from where we ended last time. And that is talk a little bit, Jim, if you will, about the State of the Union, which is the second big presentation at Dubs that never gets nearly the publicity simply because it really is a whole lot more for just developers.
This year it certainly was. I think, last year, I know I was very disappointed in the State of the Union. Last year it didn't have hardly any developer content in it, but this did. It was packed. There wasn't really anything that wasn't developer related in it. So, and I think everybody was very happy with it. Kind of like the keynote itself, there wasn't any, one or two huge things. It was just kind of like a fire hose of lots and lots and lots of stuff, So, and it's hard to remember, but a couple things that out to me. One that probably people in this group might more relate to is there's a new Swift UI charts API for making like bar and pie and all kinds of fancy charts. That looks really nice. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot more apps with charts in it because it makes it a lot easier to make an app with charts. They have a new regular expression facility built into Swift. Does anybody here know what regular expressions are? Maybe Mike.
So that's pretty cool.
No, I don't use them much.
It's what they've done in Swift is really cool. There are some other languages that have supported regular expressions in the past, and even Apple's systems have had regular expressions built into them for a long time, several, I don't know, maybe even 10 years. But they kind of like really looked at it from the ground up and built something that builds on the regular expressions everybody else uses and kind of rethought how they could be used in a really, really cool way. Unfortunately, I probably won't be able to use either of those things in my programming, but they look really, really cool. So I don't know. I'd probably have to get the developer app out and to think about what else there was, but it was just a lot, and the whole thing.
There were some. I noticed a lot of the presenters for the platform State of the Union were a lot of nerdy Apple community fan favorites, like Ricky Mondello, and like just people that like a lot of us interact with on Twitter and stuff. And so that was a lot of fun.
Yep.
Ricky Mondello,
Noval,
yeah. Swift. Noval was in there.
I until last week, I thought her last name actually was Swift. So that's actually con.
There was the WeatherKit API, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. That's right. That was the one that Novell presented, and they have they bought Dark Sky a couple of years ago and kind of disappeared. So now it has reappeared, and so there's an API for it. And interestingly, it's available both as a Swift API and a REST API, which means that it's still available to like Android developers. I don't think anybody saw that coming. So, even people that aren't Apple programmers can still access the dark sky data. I mean, they don't call it that anymore. It's the Apple WeatherKit API. And apparently, everything I've seen, people that in the know about these things say that the pricing is very generous. So, yeah, that's a nice thing. So we'll probably see more weather apps. There's not enough of them, right?
Well, they don't have to be weather apps. That's the thing. They can just be regular apps that tap into some weather data. Like it's a calendar app and I want to show you some weather. They don't have to build in their own thing. I haven't watched the specific video, but I'm kind of hoping they don't have to ask for location anymore. That just comes for free with the weather kit so that you're not having to give up your location to every weather app that walks by. I need to actually watch that one, but I hadn't watched that actual specific video yet. That is one of my hopes, though.
There's also a weather app for iPad now, which didn't used to be the case. That was very nice to see.
And I think the Mac too, right?
Maybe.
I think there's a weather app for the Mac also.
In Ventura?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense. The iPad is finally mature enough and has the horsepower to handle a weather app. So it was time to bring it to the platform.
But,
well, without an M1.
Right.
There was another app in there too.
It's probably the iPad app probably is the Mac app.
I'm looking.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's probably the same app, just in Catalyst. Or maybe Swift UI. In fact, no, I'm sure.
Well, they have a new API for shortcuts, which offers different features than the existing one, but the option to like just have things show up as actions already in shortcuts, so you don't have to go do the thing a whole bunch before it'll show up.
Right.
And there were more donations, I think, as well to shortcuts and things. Like you didn't have to build a bunch of things. Like it was going to be a lot easier for people to offer.
That's the same thing.
Yeah, they'll just be there. Yeah, that's
what shortcuts. She just said. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll just be in there, but also that the actions can have open fields in them, which was not an option in the previous one. So
yeah,
that you could type stuff in. You had to pick one that was already pre-configured, which made some of them for OmniFocus for me not that useful. But anyway, I'm excited. I haven't ruled out if it's lost any functionality, but I am excited about the increased functionality I saw. So
I don't think it's lost any functionality. One thing that I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was in the State of the Union, but they have now basically built-in support for virtual machines into the system, and there's APIs for that now. So it looks to me, and I've seen other people comment on this, like somebody could write a Parallels program in 15 minutes or something like that, which may not be good for Parallels, but so I suspect we'll be seeing free virtualization programs, and there was something going around of how to run Ventura in a VM very easily, like rather than installing it on your hardware. And another interesting thing is it appears like they're officially supporting Linux running in a VM on a Mac. Not that Apple's going to supply it, but they have the support so that people can do that. And what really shocked me, and I think a lot of people, was so that that requires an ARM-based Linux, which exists now, and there's at least one. But the interesting thing is you can have Intel binaries on your Linux image, and they will run under Rosetta. So you can have Linux programs that haven't been recompiled for ARM, and you can run them on an M1 Mac, just like you can run Intel programs on Mac programs. So that I think wow, did not see that coming, and could be really great for people. One thing that people like to do web development on Macs, and would do things like set up a Docker image and run a Linux server for testing on their local computer. So bottom line out of that technobabble is you could run, developers could test their Linux apps on their Intel Mac, without having to have a Linux box, and then later take that same software and upload it to a in the cloud to a Linux-based server. But you couldn't do that with M1 Macs, but now you can. And you can actually test your software in, as an Intel build, which is, there's not too many ARM Linuxes you can get in the cloud. It's mostly Intel. So now you can test that right on your Mac, even if you've got an M1 Mac. So I think that will be really interesting to a lot of web developers.
So it sounds like every member of the panel that listened in got something out of it, and it sounded like it was pretty positively received. So that's always good to hear.
One thing that wasn't mentioned that I thought was interesting, did not hear the word catalyst once the entire day in either the keynote or the State of the Union. Was never mentioned. There were some sessions that mentioned it, but it wasn't mentioned. So I don't. That doesn't mean it's going away or anything. But I guess maybe it's done, and it didn't really change very much.
Interesting.
But they did do some things that continuing to bring the iPad and the Mac closer together. You know how a lot of Mac apps have toolbars across the top of the window, and that's basically a standard Mac feature that Apple gives developers, which is why the toolbars look the same on all the apps that have toolbars and work the same. And the iPad never had that, but now it does. So starting with iPad OS 16, iPad apps can have toolbars, and they work the same way. And I think the big win also, and they're configurable. Like on the Mac, a lot of apps that have toolbars, there's a standard way to rearrange the tools and pick which tools you want. Have you guys seen that?
Mm-hmm.
So now that's available on iPad OS as well. And if you make an iPad app with toolbar, and then you move that to the Mac with Catalyst, then the toolbar will automatically work on both the Mac app and the iPad app. So we're probably going to see a lot more iPad apps with toolbars.
Barry in the chat room said Craig talked about Catalyst on the talk show live on Tuesday.
Yeah, he did.
So
yeah, but I'm just saying that it wasn't mentioned on Monday. It wasn't mentioned in the keynote. And as a contrast, the last 2 years, Catalyst was a big component of the last 2 years of WWDC. And, they spent, long amounts of time. And so now this year it wasn't mentioned. And they did say they did that. The first, I think it was the first slide in the State of the Union was Swift and Swift UI are the best way to write apps. So
that's your answer. Like Catalyst is a fine solution, but it is not their preferred one, and they do not see it as the future.
Well, and, you know, actually, and they also in that slide there before that they were like Objective-C and AppKit and UIKit, you know, have been really great for us, you know, over the years, and they're continuing to be available for years to come and be an important part. But you know, Swift UI is the way, and they didn't even mention Catalyst as being, you know, at all. So that's kind of interesting.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by our Patreon subscribers and MacVoices After Dark. Ever wonder what happens before the MacVoices live shows? Or what happens when the show ends or after the live feed closes? That's where MacVoices After Dark comes in. If you are a Patreon supporter at any level, you get access to the video of our off-camera conversations. Uncensored, unedited, and always off the wall. It's a small thank you to our Patreon supporters who want to peek behind the curtain. Become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/MacVoices. And thanks to everyone who supports the show. Well, maybe it's another one of those things that Apple throws out there and developers didn't bite at it. So, you know,
I think it just didn't. I think it just didn't change, and they're probably not going to develop it much further. Although, like this, you know, it wasn't really mentioned in this context, but this toolbar thing I talked about is a Catalyst. It's in Catalyst. Although I guess you can also use it from Swift UI. So I don't think it's going away, but there, you know, and there was a lot.
It was transitional. It was. I don't think Catalyst was ever meant to be the one true development mechanism. So it wasn't going to ever.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
That was the point of it.
I think this was more like there's been over the past year in, you know, developer circles, there's been some, you know, Apple's not really giving us direction. There's so many, like, if you start writing a Mac app, or, you know, it could be an AppKit, it could be in Catalyst, which is UIKit, it could be in Swift UI, you know, what's the right answer? And on iOS, it could be UIKit, it could be Swift UI. And so I think Apple was just like, if you start a new app, do it in Swift UI. Now, I did see a fair amount of pushback in developer circles last week, like, okay, you know, Apple has now made this statement that Swift UI is the best way to do things. That doesn't make it so, just because they said so. And, you know, I think there are a lot of people who are like, well, let's wait and see if they've really improved it enough. And, you know, I think over the last year, that although, you know, like there's sort of two camps. There's, you know, people that are all in on Swift UI, but I've also seen recently some high profile people are like, I'm tearing all the Swift UI out of my app because it's just too problematic, and a new version of the operating system come out, and all of a sudden big chunks of my app are broken when I didn't even change anything. So, you know, I think in the long run, but that's going to be true, but it's not really clear that in 2022,
it is not there yet.
that it's.
And two of the apps I use the very most, well, it's their beta, are in it, and it's rough. Like, it's pretty rough. Yeah. If it's a really complex app like Shortcuts or OmniFocus. So,
yeah. Honestly, the stuff I was most excited about in the State of the Union is the stuff that I'm the most concerned will not become a reality in a lot of ways, because it's not up to us, right? So, I was really excited, first of all, to see Ricky Mondello in the State of the Union. That was awesome. But second of all, to see the what he's been working on and what the passwordless future could look like. And part of the reason I was excited about that, for people who didn't see it, I'm just going to go through it real quick, which was your phone is sort of like a key. And what will happen is the key only works in the correct lock, not a lock that somebody taped over and wrote your house and pull a little arrow so that you'd put the key in. Like, If you try to do that, it doesn't work for you. And yet, it doesn't have to be on your computer in order to be a thing that actually works for you. So as long as your phone is legit, then you can take your phone, and as long as you've got your phone in your vicinity and I go log in on Brittany's computer to look at something at the bank, or I go log in on Mike's computer because he just told me about this new notebook and I need it now. And I need to be able to log in to make sure that my Visa balance can take it. Then I can do it on Mike's computer, even as long as I have my phone, which has the password set up in it properly. And getting to something that looks like a passwordless future, as a person who spends a lot of time in IT, I think, David, this was probably the part that you were really excited about too. Making it so easy for people to log in to a legitimate website with their username and a complex password. And you don't even have to know the password. You never have to type it. It just works. Capital J, capital W, just works. And when we can make that a reality in a lot of places, that's going to be really exciting. And both Brittany and I went, woo. And then we both went, yeah, but the bank says 8 characters is way too many for a password. So, what are the odds this is going to actually happen in a lot of places?
It's going to take a decade.
Right. And that's the part that was disappointing, was seeing how easily it could work. And it's one of those things that Apple has built that is going to look awesome, and once we can get enough people to buy into it, right? So that's the part that's frustrating, is like, the bank's not going to listen to just me go, seriously, what's wrong with my password? It's going to take a lot of people. It's going to take a lot of time, and all the places that won't take a space, you can't put a semicolon in your password. All the places that all of those stupid parameters are all in play are not going to, none of those places are physically, religiously, emotionally prepared to be able to roll out the kind of standard compliance that we're going to need from this. And, on a larger scale, that was the thing I saw a whole lot of, both in the keynote and in the State of the Union, was we worked with another organization on adding this feature, making this thing a standard. We signed up with an existing standards organization to do a thing. We worked with other companies that are also doing the same thing to kind of make sure we've got everything in common. And all of those things are things that I always really liked about Apple back in the day, was, recognizing they weren't the only game in town. So if you have a Windows formatted floppy, ask your parents. If you have a Windows formatted floppy and you put it in your computer, and your computer can still see it. And so that was the part that, because Apple recognized, there's more to the world than Mac OS. And so continuing to take that philosophy and work with Thread and Matter, let's work with the home key people. The FIDO2 mechanism that powers the passwordless security is a known standard. It's well documented, all that kind of stuff. Having Apple do that sort of stuff instead of pull the Sony move, which is, we're doing this, so we've decided it's standard, which Apple is also capable of doing. Having them just go live within the parameters of standards, but also make it a very Apple-y experience, was a big thing that I got out of both of the presentations from last Monday that I was really glad to see.
Hopefully it's clear to everybody that password thing is not an Apple invention. That is an industry standard. And Apple's just the first ones that seem to be, bringing it out. But Google is also, and I think Microsoft and, a bunch of others. So this is something that I think,
That's
Apple
why I'm excited about it.
Right.
There's a chance.
Exactly. Well, and, I think what's going to motivate banks and all that is not people complaining about it. It's, hacks and, all the problem, their compliance officers are going to be, we have to do this because, we're just too exposed. So I think that's what's going to drive adoption of this is, continuing hacks, continuing, news stories of, this company's been breached and, 2 million passwords were leaked. that's what's going to drive this in those kind of big corporations.
Hey, I want to.
I have an alternate idea.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to welcome Mark Fuccio, who's about to make a point.
Hello, everyone.
And also Frank Petrie, who has been able to get in finally. Frank, good to have you.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Mark, are you having any issues with Zoom tonight? Michael.
I am not.
Oh, man.
At least not yet.
It froze and said, I'm sorry, we have to do updates. And it just locked up the whole machine for the last half hour.
Yeah, that'll do it. Mark, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say on this whole thing on keyless, I think that if you think deeply about it, apart from what Jim was saying, yes, this is an industry standard. So there's a broader move for that. But if you were to think about, something like the much rumored AR, VR goggles, think about how are we going to log in on something like that? You're not going to have a keyboard. You're not going to probably want to dictate something to Siri. So, something with a key where coupled with, iMotion, where you bring up a screen and boom, it automatically fills in the credentials is a necessary technology, I think, for success of this much fantasized, much speculated AR, VR headset.
I don't know about that because that headset is, it's going to be tied to some other device that will probably manage the login.
Really? Do you want to pull the phone out of your pocket? You're walking down the street, and you're going by the bank, or you want to buy a ticket all of a sudden. Do you really think you're going to want to clunk out, your devices? I think if you look at sort of the evolution,
I think the device will already be logged on. Like when I use Apple Pay, I don't pull out and log on every time. It's you in advance will, and I don't want just because I walk by something. I'm logged onto it. I want something to have to happen to say I'm authorizing something. So I think this is separate. I think this is about preventing phishing attacks, preventing hacks of servers, and that's what this is for.
Well, I think you're oversimplifying it. I think there's multiple dimensions of why it's useful. Sort of the thing for the consortium, leading to its getting founded were the sort of attacks that you just mentioned. But think about it. If you're having some sort of visual device in front of your screen, and you're using that, and again, this is a big assumption, assuming it's sensitive to where you glaze and brings up websites, and you want to buy something. The last thing you want to screw around with is pulling out something out of your pocket, like a phone or with a watch. And I think if you look at it, what Apple has done, initially, they've had Apple Pay on the phone and then went to the watch independently. I think it's a safe assumption that if they do any sort of AR, VR goggles, that they would have that same sort of convenient user experience. You can do everything within that one device, instead of having to jerk around, with a different device in your pocket.
We've already got I just use my face or my fingerprint to tie in, to all the passwords that I have. And I don't ever type in passwords anymore. On my computer, I just touch the Touch ID. And so,
okay, so you're going to touch your eyeglass to enter.
I'm absolutely going to do something. You have to have some action that says, I am authorizing this, please. It can't happen with no interaction.
Please stand on your head and blink, or you blink twice, or you do a certain motion with your eyes. I think
whatever it is, Apple will have it figured out when we get when it's time to get there. It's going to be a convenient experience, whatever that may be. Maybe it'll be the Touch ID, like the iPad button. That's a skinny, tiny little button that you just, and it's right on the side of your glasses. Maybe
that's a possibility.
Maybe it'll be voice recognition at that point, and I'll just go, hello, sweetie. And it knows it's me. I mean, we don't know.
But the point is that, that's, you're talking about how you authorize, but this technology is about how the local device communicates securely with a server. That's what this technology is about. And it's completely independent of how you are authorizing the device to do something.
Right. By saying it's independent, I think you're drawing a bigger distinction that's necessary, because going back to what Kelly was saying, she's indicating multiple ways you might approve the transaction on the AR VR device you're wearing. There's a separate transaction, through all the security credentials, blah, 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 where you're going to authorize your AR VR device to buy a ticket or buy something at the store or whatever it's like, or even just log into and watch a movie, or wherever you need to enter a password today. So it's
but what this technology is about is, how does a server know you validate that you are really who you say you are?
That's right.
So up till now, we've used passwords for that. And this is a new system that doesn't require passwords. But I don't see how it has anything to do with a particular device on the client side, whether it's a computer, a phone, a VR.
You don't
goggles.
think there's a need. You don't think there's a need to use this as a fundamental building block in other sort of applications and user experiences, with existing and future fantasized AR VR devices from Apple? I think you're taking
Not
too
yet.
short of a view.
Well,
why, if we want to talk about what Apple's working on, why aren't we talking about the wall-to-wall CarPlay display that they showed us, where it was
because we talked about it last
dashboard
week.
by the acre? Like, why aren't we talking about that? If
we
want to know,
talked about it last week.
Yeah,
that's
and we're going to move
the thing to talk about.
And guys, we're going to move on, because we're just engaging in mindless speculation here. That we have new tools, we have new tools coming. But we can sit here and argue all day about what they should be or what they could be.
Well, but, I don't think we are talking about speculation. Pat, up till now, validation of users has been done by something a password. And this new technology is now you're validating by something you have. So there's a key on your device, and you don't supply a password. Bigger issues. What if you lose all your devices and you've lost all your access to your accounts?
This MacVoices Live panel is back in the next edition of MacVoices, where I finally got them to move on from their rather outlandish discussion of a passwordless future and take up something a little more current and a little more solid, and that is a challenge to a recent class action lawsuit, to the legal fees of a recent class action lawsuit that seemed a bit out of bounds, at least to me. That's next time on MacVoices. I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.